Food has no moral value. You are not a bad person because you ate. So go enjoy what you like and leave what you don't.
Hello YouTube, and welcome to the Body Honesty Project. My name is Lydia, and today we will be talking about moral values. You see, the fat acceptance community seems to be repeatedly touting that food has no moral value, which on the surface may be true, but what we do with it certainly does. So before we jump into the TikTok, I think we need to learn a little bit more about moral values. So why don't we watch this next clip, then come back and discuss. Does food have a moral value? Moral values are guidelines that assist a person's decision-making process. In essence, they drive the awareness between right and wrong. The development of moral values is important as it affects an individual's personality, relationships, and overall success in life. The 10 main essential moral values are respect, honesty, compassion, hard work, kindness, gratitude, sharing, cooperation, responsibility, and generosity. These values are exemplified with our behaviors. Inanimate objects and biological responses do not have a moral value, but what we do with them does. For example, a toy has no moral value, but a child taking it from another child shows a lack of kindness, respect, sharing, and generosity. You may have a biological response after hearing bad news, such as your pulse quickening or getting flushed in the face, and that has no moral value. But doing destructive behavior in the name of your anger shows a lack of respect, kindness, compassion, and responsibility. Food itself has no moral value, but what we do with it does. Do you exhibit respect to your own body by consuming food that helps it? Or do you consume food that is low in nutritional value, high in preservatives, and is also addictive? Are you honest about what you eat? Or do you lie and claim to have an ED that you don't? Are you compassionate and recognize that other people also have food-related issues? Or do you invalidate and talk over them? Do you work hard at making sure you eat healthy? Or is that not your responsibility? So no, food itself does not have a moral value, but our behaviors around food do. We can be dishonest, unkind, irresponsible, and selfish with food. But the biggest offense we commit is disrespect to our bodies in the form of gluttony. Because, like it or not, by most people's standards, gluttony is amoral. So, our moral values define our character and how we behave and interact with others. We demonstrate them outwardly so that we can both feel good about ourselves and also show that we care. Many behaviors in isolation do not have a moral value, but still can be executed in an amoral way. Take sleeping, for example. Sleeping by itself is not amoral. However, sleeping in and being late or missing work shows a lack of respect, a lack of hard work, a lack of cooperation, and a lack of gratitude, which are all moral values. We can also take sex, for example. Sex by itself is not amoral, but sleeping with your neighbor's wife certainly is. This is no different with food and eating. Food itself does not have a moral value, and neither does eating, but eating can be executed in an amoral way. So, with all of that in mind, let's now dive into the TikTok.
Is it useful for me to be moralizing this right now? Honestly, 9 out of 10 times, it's not a moral issue. Let's take eating, for example. Feeding yourself, not a moral issue. Being full, not a moral issue. Being hungry, not a moral issue. Having eaten and still being hungry, not a moral issue. But who is it who benefits from us making it a moral issue.
Let's start with the first one. Feeding yourself is not a moral value, which by itself is true. However, how do we feed ourselves? Do we feed ourselves so that we can perform our best, to give us the energy that we need to execute our daily functions? Or are we purposefully indulging in high-calorie, preservative-laden, chemical-laden food, which has no benefit to our bodies but tastes good? Are we eating with nutrients in mind, or are we eating just what we want? Now, I don't think that moral eating involves eating clean all the time. However, if you have a pattern of repeatedly eating only processed garbage food, you are showing a lack of respect and responsibility to your own body, and therefore that eating behavior is being executed in an amoral way. Let's move on to the next one. Being hungry is not a moral value. And that's true. But I would like to question, how many times are you actually hungry? Because there's real hunger and then there's head hunger, and neither of them are moral values. But we have to be able to differentiate between the two so that we know what to do about it. Because if you are actually hungry, of course you have to eat. Your body is telling you that it needs nourishment. But if you are head hungry, you might emotionally want to eat. And there's nothing wrong with doing that sometimes, but if you were doing that repeatedly, you're always using food to deal with your emotions, you are lacking responsibility to yourself and respect to yourself, because yourself does not need the extra food and the consequences that come with the extra weight. In my house, whenever the kids say, "Mom, I'm hungry, I want a snack," I don't say no, but I always ask them, are you hungry or are you bored? Because sometimes it's boredom eating, which is unnecessary. I'm not depriving my children. I just ask them to stop and think for a second. Am I actually hungry, or am I just looking for something to do? And if they are hungry, of course I feed them. But it's a good question that I think that we should all ask ourselves. Let's move to the next one. Being full is not a moral value. And it isn't. But if you routinely eat to being past full, like over full, stuffed, uncomfortable, that's a problem, as it shows a lack of respect, responsibility, and compassion for yourself. Because eating past full repeatedly, routinely, regularly is the definition of gluttony, and gluttony is amoral. And on to the last one in the TikTok, which is being hungry after eating. Now, this, of course, is not amoral. It is a biological response. But there's a couple things we have to consider here. Number one, are you still actually hungry, or should you wait a few minutes and see? Because sometimes the satiety hormones take a few minutes to register in the brain. And if you are legitimately hungry, I think you should ask yourself why. Is it because the first thing you ate didn't have enough protein in it? Was it full of sugar? Did it have chemicals in it that make you crave to eat more? And learning these things does not need to be a dive into your morality. Because if we pause and think why, we might actually learn something. If I'm routinely eating and I stop, but I'm still hungry after eating and I want to eat more, maybe I should ask myself, why am I still hungry? Did the first thing I eat not have enough protein in it? Was it too small? Was it full of sugar? Was it full of chemicals? These are the things that show self-responsibility. So no, being hungry after having already eaten is not a moral value. But if this repeatedly happens, you might want to assess why. Now, I don't want to come off as saying that we always should take the moral high road. I mean, we're human. It's not possible. We're all going to do things that lack respect or gratitude or cooperation. It's just human nature. But if you notice that it's a pattern and not an occurrence that happens every now and then, it could be a problem. Telling a fib about what you ate for dinner every now and then is dishonest, but it's not amoral. However, lying about having a restrictive ED that caused you to gain hundreds of pounds due to starving yourself fat is dishonest and amoral. Pushing and bumping into people and not saying "excuse me" in a crowd shows a lack of kindness and respect, but it's not amoral. However, jumping on TikTok and blasting all skinny people and saying how much you hate them and that they can go cry their skinny tears, well, that's amoral. The last question in the TikTok was asking who benefits by making it a moral value. And I know that they were going down the diet culture route, but who benefits by making it not a moral value? That would be the billion-dollar fast food industry, wouldn't it? So rather than line diet culture's pockets, we're going to support fast food instead? That doesn't seem to make any sense to me. But we should also ask the opposite question, which is, instead of who benefits, who is hurt by this? And the answer is you. Because all this messaging does is encourage you to disrespect and be irresponsible to yourself. And if you value hard work, respect, responsibility, generosity, sharing, cooperation, all of that, you are lying to yourself if you think that intentional obesity complies with them. And that is neither good nor honest. And on this channel, we're all about being honest. So until next time, stay body positive, but also body honest.